adjunct professor in the College of Social Sciences and Law at the University of Loyola, Andalusia in Cordoba, Spain. And she's also the project coordinator for the foundation, the ETEA Foundation, which is the Development Institute of the University of Loyola, Andalusia. She received her doctoral degree with the University of the Basque Country in 2023. And if any of you are working full-time while doing your doctoral studies, you know it takes an awful lot of really good time management, and she shows it's possible. She's worked for 20 years now in the field of development, with 19 years working in a variety of countries: Honduras, Guatemala, Nicaragua, El Salvador, Dominican Republic, Ecuador, Gambia, and Bangladesh, doing participatory research, outreach, and applied projects. She worked as the regional director for Central America for the ETEA Foundation since 2015, leading and coordinating collaborative and participatory development projects addressing food security and supporting sustainable coffee and cacao production and market development, gender-based violence, women's empowerment and entrepreneurship, climate change, resilience and adaptation, drivers of migration and experiences of transnational families, renewable energy, including biogas. So she has a wide range of experiences with applied and participatory research. So with no further delay, a pleasure to introduce Kelly.
Well, so thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here. Sorry for my voice. I got a cold. I hope you can understand me. As Catherine has said, I want to introduce myself again. I just want to point out that the Foundation has its mission to combine intervention, research, and innovation to improve the quality of life of marginalized groups, especially in countries in the global south. And that's why I was able to participate in so many projects. And now I'm just going to start with the topic of today. I'm not spending much time talking about sustainability. I think you are well versed with it. I just want to highlight that when we talk about sustainability, we always talk about three interconnected areas that need to be working together in order to achieve sustainable development. So we need not only environmental sustainability, but also social and economic sustainability. And so when we talk about circular economy, basically it works with the same area. So circular economy wants to achieve environmental and social benefits while also promoting business economic opportunities by eliminating waste and pollution and circulating products and materials at their highest values. And if you can see the three symbols that are represented in the circle, these symbols are the three foundational elements that are essential to reach the goals of circular economy. So basically, circular economy is kind of a new term that has been coined quite recently, but it's basically something that has been working for several years, I think, especially in origin countries like Honduras, where I based my work. So what are the three foundational elements? On one side, we want local approaches to generate local value, because we consider that during the production, especially in the agricultural production, we don't have waste, we have byproducts or residues that we can reuse or repurpose to reintroduce in the economy. So we can at the same time diversify the production, but also promote a more sustainable approach of cultivation. At the same time, we are shifting from a value chain to a value cycle. So basically, the traditional paradigm is that we have an input, we have a process of production, and in the end we have product and waste. And now the approach is circular. So we are saying we don't have waste, we can mimic more the nature with a more holistic and systemic approach that allows to use all the resources more efficiently and causing less or hopefully zero contamination. And the third foundational element is the regenerative agriculture. So we work with agroforestry systems that act as significant carbon sinks by restoring degraded lands, growing healthy food, and commercialized valuable crops. So basically, the modern circular economy expands on previous concepts such as reduce, reuse, and recycle, and say, okay, first of all, we need to refuse to use inputs that are not necessary or that are highly polluting, rethink how we can maximize energy at the same time that we reduce the consumption of the environment, reuse, but not only reuse, repair, refurbish, remanufacture, repurpose, so we can give another purpose to the byproducts or maybe to just part of the byproducts so they can either be reintroduced in the same circle or get a new life. And of course, recycle and recall. And this is just a brief introduction to circular economy, just to see, not to understand what we are talking about. Now I'm just going to focus on the coffee production in Honduras, which is where we have been working. I didn't say before, but ETF Foundation started its work in Honduras 20 years ago. And we have constantly worked with coffee producers and coffee cooperatives since then. And that's allowed us to accompany them with innovations and improvements in that production. And that's also why we are present in the field and we can work hand in hand with those cooperatives. So I always talking about we and never I, because I feel that I don't do much, but it's a research team, it's an intervention team, and it's also the cooperative and the farmers themselves that are participating in every action. So just to see how the coffee production is in Honduras. Honduras is a small country. I think the population is just over 9 million inhabitants, and still Honduras is the fifth coffee producing country in the world. And actually, the coffee represents 38% of the agricultural export and 35% of the total export. So it is considered to be the economical engine of Honduras. According to the Instituto Hondureño del Café, that is the technical branch of the national policy, in the harvest 2022-2023, there were 97,000 producers who produced and exported coffee. This is a smaller picture of reality because only those who own the land are registered and export coffee through formal channel are contabilized here. But actually, it is estimated that about 150,000 producers are small owner and produce coffee. And actually, before the pandemic, the users that were registered 120,000 producers. But what has happened is that several producers of small quantity are now selling to bigger producers or to cooperatives who export the coffee and then are registered in the statistics, just to have an idea. No? But through those small farms, over 1 million jobs are created each year. And I remember, 9 million inhabitants and 1 million jobs. So it's really, really important in Honduras. However, most of the farmers own less than 3.5 hectares of land. So it's a small production. They mostly live in poverty because they can't reach enough production, but also because of the international prices that have been constantly low. And women are in a disfavorable condition. Only 21% of the producers are women, according to the statistics, and they own 18% of the production, either because their land is smaller or also because they don't have the same access to resources and training. So in fact, their land tend to be less productive. And if we talk about the decision-making positions in the coffee sector, only 10% of them are occupied by women. So I've seen some improvement in the years I've lived in Honduras, but still gender equity is a big challenge. And regarding the global sector, the main challenges they're facing is climate change for sure, because it has changed the raining pattern. So now producers are facing more floods, more droughts, but also during the harvest season, the weather is not as cold as it used to be, and it's very variable. So the cherries are not ripening very well. And so in the past few years, farmers have tried to adapt to climate change, and at national level also they are trying to get some mitigation of the climate change. But of course, climate change is produced more in the global north, so they can't resist, and they try more to adapt. One thing that the ICAF have said is that most probably by 2050, if the conditions keeps getting us in the same trend, several farms won't be able to produce coffee because they need to to higher altitude, but it's not possible because it would mean to deforest the land, and so they're really struggling with this. Another challenge is migration. Most of the landowners are not migrating, but their sons, their daughter, their kids are, so there is not relief for the future. And also the farmer relies on pickers and external workers, and now they're struggling to find workers for their farm, for their west season especially. Then the production cost, as I already said, the production cost has increased constantly year by year, while the international prices has maintained more or less the same. And that has caused that for several producers, it's impossible to even recover what they're investing. That means that they can't fertilize enough, or they have to do the work of 5 people in only 2 or so on. And that means that they live in this cycle of. And then the other challenge is the disposal of the coffee production residues. That is what I want to center in the presentation today. I don't know if you're familiar with the coffee, so I start from there. This is a coffee brand, so these are the coffee cherry. And the composition of a coffee cherry is outer skin, pulp, parchment, silver skin, and seed. Usually in a coffee cherry, there are 2 seeds, and seeds is the only thing that we drink. So you can already have an idea that the rest of the cherry is just a byproduct of the production. And this is the coffee processing. We have three main way of processing coffee. In the wet and semi-dry process, we depulp the coffee. That means we have already taken out the pulp, and that is the first byproduct. In the wet process, we also wash the depulped cherry. It gives wastewater that is called aguas mieles, at least in Central America, that is highly polluting, and it has to be stored in specific basin, not to contaminate the river and the water sources, and it's been the most challenging until now waste that we have in coffee. Then we have to dry the cherry either without the pulp or with the pulp until it reaches 11-12% of humidity, and then before exporting or roasting the coffee, it has to pass through the hulking processes. Then we also dispose of the parchment, was the other part. And then of course you roast, grind, brew, and drink. And so the consumption side is mainly done in the global north, in the buying countries. Only a small percentage of the produced coffee is drunk by the producers. Right? So we have focused basically in this part of the production of it. And one thing is that I think over 80% of the coffee is processed with wet process. So it's the one that separates more the coffee. And to have an idea of the production, when we collect 1 ton of cherries, we only get 200 kilos of green coffee beans. The green coffee bean is the coffee ready to be exported or to be roasted. So we have already lost 80% of the weight. This is the first, byproduct. And in the end, we just drink 1 to 5% of the weight. So we basically lose almost the entire cherry, but this loss is actually a potential because we can transform all these byproducts in energy, fertilizer, bioplastic, cosmetics, jewelry. There are a lot of things that we can do, and this is what circular economy is about. You can see last year, I think it was around the world, 29 million tons of total biomass were generated. So it's a lot, and 72% of this biomass was generated in the origin countries. And that's also why most of the innovation focused in the origin countries. And I don't think you can see very well, but basically what is in green are the inputs, and in red are all the output or byproducts that we can work with to add value or to reduce the waste, and we're basically focused on this part. And now I'm going to speak. So just to, as I said, we have worked for 20 years in Honduras, so we have worked with over 30 or maybe over 40 cooperatives or associational groups of farmers. And 3 consistent partners of us are Adocam, Comsa, and Cafelo. And I just want to talk briefly about them because they are our local partner in the projects that I want to present. Adocam is the Asociación Denominación de Origen Café Macala. It's an association that certifies the origin of the coffee of the region Macala, that includes 19 municipalities. Adocam certifies that the coffee is produced in Macala region, but also the special quality that is 80 plus, so basically specialty coffee, and also that during the production, environmental and social sustainability have been respected, and also that the coffee has been planted and processed through traditional ways. So there are some traditions that they need to respect. Adocam also make intervention because its mission is to have environmental, economic, and social sustainability for the entire region. So we collaborate with them a lot. Comsa is a company with over 1,700 members. It produces only organic coffee commercialized through fair trade. Actually, I think it's the first company that started working with the circular economy approach, although they didn't call it circular economy. But they had actually representation. Catherine also know them very well, and they were saying, if we keep producing as we are doing, we are going towards that, while we need to go back to produce as the nature does. No? So they have the representation of the circular, of the cycle since, I think, maybe for 20 years. Coca-Cola is a cooperative with about 600 members, and they also pay a lot of attention of environmental and social sustainability. So we have been working with them for several years now, and they're the main partner that we have today. And before the projects, I mean, I chose just 2 projects to present today because I don't have much time, but we have also worked with agroforest systems, with organic fertilizer, prepared with the coffee pulp. So both the cooperative and individual farmers can reutilize that pulp to fertilize their coffee. The cooperative are using the husk of the parchment as fuel to dry the coffee at an industrial level. Comsa actually has a project to recycle waste from the city. And then several women started to innovate by producing coffee. They call it coffee wine, but it's actually liquor, or soap, or jewelry, or cosmetics, using either the seeds or the pulp, or the byproducts of. And now to the 2 examples of applied projects we have. So with that outcome, we developed a project to understand if we could have coffee flour and coffee tea starting or using the coffee pulp. So what we do at the beginning, we pick 20 beneficiaries. Some were individual farmers, some were cooperatives, some were municipalities. They were all drying the pulp using solar dryers, and we inserted some detector to see the humidity, the weather, the wind, and several other variables to understand their impact in the process of drying and in the final products. We also utilize several grinders to see how thick should be the flour should be to understand if it were possible to use it to cook, right? And then we conducted bromatological analysis to understand the nutritional components, because there were hypotheses that the coffee flour could be very nutritious. And what we found is that although it is adapted for human consumption, actually it also has caffeine and sugar. So it could be something that can be added to the local diet, but cannot be promoted, to a full consumption or to consume every day in high quantity. We had a chef to try different recipes, and we organized fair where there was free tasting, and we conducted survey interviews to understand the acceptability of the products and to understand which one the population or the local community would prefer. And then we also have a little recipe booklet for the families. And then we also made a survey to understand household consumption of these products, and other research to understand the obstacle and catalysts for the commercialization of the products, because of course we wanted at the same time to reduce the waste, to see if it could add up on the nutrition side, but also to give a way to diversify the production. But of course, introducing a new product is not always easy. So we also work with that. And then we hired the media company to conduct a communication campaign that was centered on nutrition in general. So we introduced these new products, but actually the campaign was more about how can you have a balanced diet in your community based on the local production. And so this was one of the projects. And the other that is still ongoing, will end in April. We call this Bio to Power, and had the objective of seeing if it's possible to produce electricity using the coffee byproducts, either the pulp or the aguas mieles, the waste wood. So the first thing that we did was to conduct an energetic auditing, because we work with COMSA and Coca-Cola, and we asked them, how much do you pay? How much electricity do you need to work? And they actually didn't know exactly. They never systematized all the information, although the information was there. And so we spent a couple of days with all the invoices and inputting the data. And this is the consumption and the expenditure. And in Coca-Cola, in November, December 21, they spent almost $16,000 per month only in electricity. And that is because the public electricity is not very stable or reliable. There are a lot of blackouts and also a lot of ups and downs. The electricity is not stable. So they rely a lot on fuel. They need their own generators. And that's, of course, is also highly polluting. And so they wanted to decrease this dependence on fuel. And starting from that, we developed a tool to measure the carbon footprint that can be used either at the cooperative level or at the farm level. This is just like the summary in COMSA, but it has kind of 10 sheets, and I can show you afterwards if you are interested. So the idea was that it's important to know your carbon footprint. The cooperative wanted to know, but also the buyers more and more want to know and are against buying coffee that can demonstrate that carbon footprint is low. And the tool allow the cooperative to know what was their emission, but also to plan for the future, because there are buyers boards that can try to play and see if it's a feasible change for the following harvest. They could make this change and therefore decrease their carbon footprint. Now we are in the process of giving back all the tools and training the people in this. And the other result that we wanted was to understand if it was possible to produce biogas or bioethanol. So it was a pilot study, but we conducted laboratory scale evaluation. Like here you can see that we were collecting wastewater, wastewater from the coffee, wastewater from the city, and we combine it also with other wastes to see what was the best combination, and also if it was possible to produce biogas in a constant way during the entire harvest period, because that's another problem. I don't know if you can see it here, but this is how biogas is basically stored and produced. You insert aguas mielas there with bacteria and so on, and there the biogas is produced. And in the end, we found out that there is a substantial potential for biogas production, not for bioethanol. Bioethanol is not feasible, but biogas is possible. At least in Honduras, in the regions we have studied, the best combination come from mixture of 50% of coffee wastewater, which is aguas mielas, 50% on landfill wastewater. And in Comsa, the other possibility is wastewater with coffee pulp. And so the biogas produced could generate electricity sustainably. So now we are in the moment, as I say, in the phase of training, giving back, and also trying to find funds to escalate and provide with the technology that they need to produce electricity. And just some conclusion. This is, as I said, we are working here, and you can see that we have already found ways to reuse pulp, mucilage, wastewater, and husks in the process, either as fertilizer or energies. And we also use some of these to produce flower tea, jewelry, and other things. So the circular economy approach is clearly potential for a positive environmental and economic impact. We can also have a social positive impact, especially if let's say it can create more jobs. The problem is that we still have the problem of the low prices to fund all these jobs. But actually, it has the potential to increase the welfare and to create new and more innovative jobs. And also, of course, when you reduce the pollution and you are able to produce in a way that conserve the soils, of course, also the well-being of people is increased. As for gender equality, as always, is a mixed answer, because we have seen women enter more than men with innovations, at least when they can have access to bioproducts. But if we look at the energy, the production of the energy, or the control of the resources, as I presented at the beginning, they're still not represented in equal way as the man. So basically, if we don't pay attention to the structural barriers, we will still improve, we will still provoke that men gain more than women. And the main challenge is we need policies and regulations adaptation, because of course the regulation right now is not prepared for this new approach. We need much more finance resources and mechanisms. We need to develop market, but also we need to create more awareness in consumers, so the consumers can actually consume coffee that is produced in a more sustainable way. We need to train more the farmers. The farmers ask, there is a demand to produce more sustainably, not to pollute their own land. But of course, we also have to find a way that is learning by doing, that can be compatible with their production and their daily life, basically. And I think the most important thing is that we need to share, and when I mean we need to share and speak in global north and global south, because most of the financial resources and also of the potential for research are in the north, and all these things are going on in the global south. So we need to find mechanisms to share more investment knowledge and also profits in a more equitable, but also adaptive and fair way. And I think I've already used all my time, so I will stop here, and I hope you have some questions for me so we can dive deeper into what I presented. I see a hand, sir.
Can you describe the difference between water processing and land processing?
Yeah, in the water processing, you depulp the cherry, and then there is the wet process. You also water away the mucilage that is attached to the seed, and then you only have the seed with the parchment to dry. In the dye process, yeah.
How do you take the silver husk that you're talking about? I mean, you both dry processing and water processing. The husk is removed manually.
No, but the husk is removed just before the export or the roasting. So you dry with the husk, and then you have machines. The machine, trilladora.
Yeah,
it's a mill. It's like a mill. Yeah.
But isn't it? I mean, you use the same machine whether you're dry processing or water processing, correct?
It's similar, but it needs to be adjusted because in the dry process you have the entire cherry. You dry the entire cherry, so you will have, instead of only the seed, you have the entire cherry. Then you have to remove the dried pulp with the parchment at the same time.
Yeah.
So there's still meal, but
Yeah, but I'm just trying to.
uses a lot of water.
Okay. I've never seen it. So I'm trying to.
It's a long process actually. I kind of read a lot. I mean, it can be done also at the farm level, except for the husking. The husking is usually done in the exporter because they have this bigger mill. But otherwise, you have the pulping machine can be small or wide that separate the seed from the pulp. Then the seed with the mucilage goes in, it's like bassinets full of water. First we ferment, then it goes there to wash away all the mucilage that is attached, and then it goes to the place where you are going to dry. I don't have picture here. After it's fermented. And in the dry process, you ferment the entire cherry and then you dry it.
There are still parts that
I think it's difficult without seeing it. I wanted mostly to point out that you have different type of byproducts depending on the way you process them. It's a long process. It takes 48 to 72 hours just to prepare the seed to be dried. And then it takes, well, it depends. If it's machine operated, you can dry the seed in 2 days, more or less. Otherwise, it can take 2 weeks.
2 weeks to water.
Only to dry. After you have the pulp fermented and washed, it takes 2 weeks, more or less, to dry. And if it's the dry process that you just ferment and put in the solar dryer, it can take 3 weeks or more than 3 weeks to dry the coffee to be ready for the export. Yes.
Thank you so much for that talk, and it was really great. I learned a lot, and I really appreciated the sort of the framework slides that you had at the beginning to explain the circular economy. It's really great. The question I have is just thinking about the scale. You know, you mentioned 80% of the farmers are 3.5 hectares of land, and thinking about adapting these sorts of solutions, which are just incredible, you know, to reuse these waste products and things like that. Is that, can they do that at, you know, the scale of the farm? I mean, I don't know what the post-harvesting process is, whether it's done at the scale of the farm or whether they collaborate with neighbors and then bring their coffee beans together and process together. So is that going to function, or do they need to collaborate across farms to make something like the biogas?
So for the biogas, they need to be collaborating for sure. So we actually piloted at cooperative level, or company level, like COMSA. So because you need a certain amount of coffee, bioproducts, and it also has to be constant. The harvest lasts about 4 months, but because some farm is lower, some farm is higher, you can say 5 months, but it's not constant in a farm. So it's very difficult. It could be possible, but it's very difficult. You know? So the biogas would be produced at the cooperative level, and actually we have seen that the most feasible thing was to use that electricity for the same processing of the coffee. You know?
But they have this history again of collaborating together.
Yeah, it
be-
depends on the part of Honduras. Actually, in the west part, they have a long history of collaborating, and they have great cooperatives. And it's only through cooperative that they can get access to training, to innovation, and so on. In the standard part of the country, where we have started working 2 years ago, we have found a very different scenario, and most of the farmers just sell to intermediaries. So it's very difficult to do the same. That's for the biogas. Then, for example, the coffee flour, coffee tea, but also preparing the fertilizer with the pulp is possible at the farm level. Coffee farmers are very different. You know, some of them prepare the coffee for the exportation, dry the coffee completely in their farm, and they just take the coffee to the cooperative or directly to the export. Other depulp the coffee and take the wet coffee to the cooperative to be dried there. Others just take the sherry and took everything for the cooperative to prepare. So it's very different, you know. But there are farmers who are already preparing their own fertilizer and working with their own byproducts. So it depends on what we're thinking about.
All those like farmers and business stakeholders during the program. Sometimes we can have a good idea, but no farmers want to join because of extra time, extra costs, and this situation. And also, basically, I just want to ask how do you work with the local community and for those programs, are they came out from the organization or from local?
Mm-hmm. Basically, the idea came from the cooperatives and associations. So we tried to respond to their demands. And that's, of course, make it easier. Not easy, just easier, because they want to know, they want to understand, they know that there is a potential, and they ask us to help them because they don't have the ability to conduct this type of research. At the same time, there is a challenge because, as I said, the market is very difficult, and for example, the production of biogas will require someone that can take care of that. That means to hire maybe 2 or 3 more people at the cooperative level. And that, of course, it will depend on the incomes if the selling of the coffee goes well. As for the farmers, I'm also in a cooperative, let's say. Sometimes they need to respond to urgent demands and not to what they really want, in the sense that a buyer can change something in their order at the very last minute, and for them it's more important to sell than to transform any byproducts, no? So that's why I was saying at the end, we need to really change a little bit the market, and we need to work with consumer awareness. Otherwise, I believe that all the responsibility is on the shoulders of the producers, you know? So it's on the one side, they want this kind of innovation, and they're very passionate about their farm and their production. They treat the coffee as if it was their son, their daughter. They really talk about their coffee production. So now my son, you know. So they love their land and they don't want to see it spoiled or degraded. But at the same time, they're struggling to maintain it well. So there is this trade-off. I don't know. We choose the order.
Well, thank you for the presentation. And my question was about the biogas. And you mentioned that one of the challenges is the financial part. Where are the cooperatives and you are looking for financial options?
We're looking actually through international cooperation agencies. Yes. Yes, at the moment with a Spanish agency. We tried last year, we didn't get funds. We will improve the project this year and we will keep trying. That's the idea. For the cooperative, it's very difficult. Actually, both Comsa and Coca-Cola had already tried to produce biogas. These things was already in Comsa. We didn't build it. We already found it. But both cooperative were not able to find someone who could provide the research. So they tried. They had biogas. Comsa, including the first visit we made, they had biogas there, but they didn't know what to switch on and off when it reached the higher potential for electricity or not. Coca-Cola dismissed everything because they were sold a technology that's broken after 2 years, basically, or 4 years, something like that. Was like, it wasn't a good material. And the person that advised us was actually kind of a volunteer that didn't know well enough. So that's why I also was said it was a demand of, of the cooperatives, but for them it's really difficult to get funding. So that's why we want the international cooperation.
Yes, I have a question regarding also the wet and the dry process. So is this so? I imagine that I don't think about that. The water footprint of the wet process is like higher than the other one.
Yeah.
So if that's something that matters to the buyers, but also if it's reflected in the way the coffee tastes, if it's like wet or dry, I don't know. And the other question was regarding the circular economy, if there are like economic incentives in the sense of, for example, certificates that certify these farms as like circular economy farms, and that can also be reflected on the prices of this coffee, which I expect some of them are like specialty coffees with this added value. So I think that might be pushing or incentivizing more farmers to like try to take advantage of the byproduct.
Okay. So for the first question, the wet process is a higher footprint. However, the dry process only selling the specialty coffee market, which is very small, basically. It has an impact in the flavor. We have basically it's the one that could be sweeter, winery, and a little bit sour. But if you're not into specialty coffee, you don't buy it. You have to spend more money. So that's why the other one is you can also have wet process specialty coffee, but let's say that what you can find in the supermarket is all wet coffee because it's what's been going on for years and what the consumers are used to. At the moment, the cooperatives and the producers are used to and prepared to produce the wet coffee. That's why even if the water is higher, it's still the most. And so the only way to change that is to change the market and to change consumer awareness and to go, and that's on one side. For the second question, there is not a certification that I'm aware of, but the International Coffee Organization is paying a lot of attention now to circular economy. Actually, they issued a report last year, and they also created a group just for circular economy. So maybe in the future, this kind of coffee still could receive organic or rainforest or other certification that already exists. And then sometimes buyers just ask for, they are willing to pay a little extra if you can demonstrate something that is, for example, for the carbon footprint, they could pay a little bit more. But it depends on the buyer.
You partly answered this question, but maybe you could expand a little bit more. What are some of the perceptions of producers on the circular economy? Like you mentioned that some of the co-ops have been doing this sort of circular reuse of byproducts for a long time. But maybe on a more expanded scale, how do producers conceptualize the circular economy? Is it something that you're having an issue with, like sort of communicating to producers of coffee?
Mm-hmm. So I think that if you ask a producer about circular economy, 95% of them don't know what it is. They just use it, because it's actually kind of a new concept that is being theorized, but it's based on what actually agricultures, I think not only the coffee producer, but some agricultural producers were already doing. But if you are more specific and you ask, what do you do with the coffee byproducts, then you can have more answer. And as I said, they've been studying and they've been innovating with that. You can also see a lot of differences because we have been working with cooperatives that are really good. And as I said, in the west part of the country, you can find a lot of farmers who are innovative, who want to use this kind of technologies, who are at least paying a lot of attention on this. But if you go to the center of the country or the east part of the country, you find a very different panorama. So they probably will say, no, this is just a waste, this is polluting, don't know what to do with it. Don't know if it sounds.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and then
I have a question that's related to a lot of the other questions. I'm curious, for the farmers that you're working with, the producers, what for them are the easiest, simplest of these practices and products? So, I mean, generating biogas is pretty complicated. You have to have machines, you have to have expertise. Of the practices of the different products you're listing, soaps and flowers, what are the sort of the simple, the low-hanging fruit versions for a circular economy that, from the point of view of a coffee producer?
Yeah, I think fertilizers is not very difficult because actually the producer who produce fertilizer are those who are depulping their farm. So they already have the pulp there. They just need to know how to manage it and then store and use it. So that is actually not very difficult. It's just that they need some training. Yeah. And then the coffee, tea, and flour actually is not that difficult either. But as I said, it's not something that we actually incentivize so much because it's good for a few coffee shops to have it because it's innovative, but then it also has caffeine and sugar, so it's not that. Yeah. And also jewelry, for example, is not very difficult, but not everyone can become jewelry.
I just want to thank you because being from Honduras is really it's good to hear the perspective from side. And yeah, congratulations because I know it is hard to do this kind of things. We have been working there for years, and especially with small producers. And but I have questions about the following up because that's what I'm saying has like Honduras we always personally I think is valuable. And the capacity building, what is the approach in the academia like for all these new concepts? And I know about the challenges about the markets. So
just to give you an example of the awareness, I just this last month they opened Starbucks, and the people was there like 4 in the morning making line just to try the coffee. I mean, we have one of the best coffees in the world. I mean, I brought my big suitcase full of coffee.
Yeah.
And then
I do the
oh my
same when I
gosh,
go to
I
Honduras.
wish I could be there. I said that to tell people that they are doing it. But I think it's just a market awareness. So, yeah. And then I want to ask you about this approach of how to follow up on the concept of who in Honduras will keep doing like spreading it. You have approached the academia of is any in your next stage of the project to reach that side, that sector? And about the other question is about the regulation for the US about deforestation of the products, which I know they I would say resign for 1 year to the industry to be ready, which is something like really funny. And then how have you approached that also? Like I know there is a lot of European projects coming from the European Union funds preparing producers, especially coffee growers, for the state impact because they seem like these small producers are very vulnerable to the impact of this new regulation from the European Union produce free deforestation free. So I just would like to know about that. Thanks.
So first question, capacity building. I think one important thing is to work with strong cooperatives, strong groups. Actually, before I went to Honduras, India Foundation helped Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola at the moment had like 25 or 30 members. This was very small. I think it was 2006 or 2007, and now it has 600 members, and it has grown really, really much. And I think we started with small projects that were beneficiaries and they were a local partner. Then for a few years, we couldn't work with them with groups. We didn't have funds, but the cooperative was solid, and so it kept growing, you know? And I think that there are projects that need this kind of organization to work and to be sustainable, because otherwise you just get an innovation, but there is no this base to sustain it, you know. We also work with Kurok, which is the regional center in the west of the National University. And for example, the laboratory analysis for the biogas were conducted in Kurok. So we have this kind of collaboration. But I would like, okay, we have this laboratory, but we need a couple of machines, and we also need someone who can tell us what we need to research. Then we have the capacity, so we try to also have this kind of collaboration. So the capacity also stays in use, right? And even with farmers, we have different strategies to try to work with them. We work a lot using methodologies like learning by doing. Días de campo, we are in the field with them to try to. So it's the best way they can learn. But we can still see that some of them have a mentality that allows them to innovate, to be creative, and they really want to keep doing it. And others just resist the innovation. And that is something that you have to manage in the field. That I would say, Adocam, we have worked with them for 12 years now. Same CONSA, Coca-Cola for a long period of time. So we know our partners. I think it's really important that this group are solid. That's and then the EU regulation. We talk a little bit about it on Tuesday. So basically, the new regulation says that you can't export any agricultural product actually to Europe if the land has been deforested after 2020. And for that, you have to provide a due diligence and also georeference. So, for example, Coca-Cola, Consan, and other cooperatives that we work with use drones to just georeference the area of all the members and to see the forest. And they now have, and they did this last year or 2 years ago because it's where they could do it. So I don't know how they can prove that it's not done after 2020. But they were also telling me that if any year there is a difference, the buyer can say, no, there has been a deforestation, so I won't buy the coffee from that farm or from that area. Although the regulation says, it's to prevent further deforestation, but it's really tricky. Then the due diligence, the regulation only says that there is a due diligence, but it doesn't say if it's the cooperative, the national government, the buyer. So it's open to the possibility that all of them can provide the due diligence, which is on one side could be an advantage, but on the other side, what the cooperative told me last year is that the importers and the buyer were scared that they won't be able to sell the coffee, so we're basically applying stricter rules until they can see how it works. This regulation only talk about deforestation, but they tells me that the European Union is asking more and more about the carbon footprint. That's also why they want to work with it, and that's very interesting. So once again, I think, and the European Union, basically what I've seen is that they've invested a lot of money to train people, to explain the regulation, and all our partners have been in these presentations and trainings, and they're still wondering, they had to use their creativity to provide the due diligence and so on. So actually, it was starting this year, I think, but last year the European buyers were already asking the due diligence because they said, I won't sell all the coffee this year, and if I have something in the storage, then I can have problem next year when the regulation is enforced. So basically, the buyers even started 1 year before. We try, other countries, for example, ask us to work with them. And what we are doing is, or will do because the project will start next month, is also trying to find more information and find a local way to provide the due diligence.
Do you know what about the mixture of coffee wastewater and landfill wastewater makes that the best for biogas production?
That I could ask our engineers.
Okay.
Actually. There are a lot of with things. I believe them. But I can ask if you want. There are my emails here, and if you want to look further into it, I can provide it. There are also writing an article and so on. Just that I come from political science and development studies and gender, so social science. Engineering is not my thing. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Carlos, Carlos.